Hi, folks. So today we are going to look for the editorial which has come in the Economic Times e-paper on the 3rd of January 2025. So out of these, I have identified that the ones which is the dollar to their own dance and a low-hanging fruit, but what's its weight. So these two are important editorials in terms of any banking aspirant who is aiming to prepare and just to try to read the economic time paper regarding anything involved in the economy. Okay, so first we'll go with this one. So it says a low-hanging fruit but worth its weight. So exports give farmers access to larger markets. So we know that major of the income, okay, which farmers have, it is by selling their own products. I mean, whatever is getting produced in their own farm, when they sell it, so that gives an earning to the farmer. Now, when they are exporting it to the higher audience, let's say in the international institutions in the international world, so there will be a larger market for them to cater, and also besides us, they will have a large competition as well. So it will motivate them to uh, grow good foods and good farms, like to maintain them so that they will be competent enough to compete in the international market. So they'll have to maintain high standard qualities and the high yield also, so that they can uh, have the products in abundance. Okay. So let's say, let's see what this editorial talks about. So incremental diversification of India's export basket was overdue, and the fact that farm produce figures in the list of high growth items is heartening. So it says that the diversification which the Indian export are doing, it is very heartening. So we are going in the right terms, right? So the economy must reduce its export concentration in IT services to select markets such as the US, and manufacturing offers the most viable alternative. So basically, in our economy, what we see that the economic GDP of our country is basically mostly coming from the IT services. Though 40% of the population are there in farming sector, in the agriculture sector, but it is only contributing to 16 to 18% of the GDP, right? So just because of that, what we are aiming that instead of providing IT services to the markets in US, we should aim to cater into manufacturing services. Or I mean, manufacturing. We should try to um, do good in the manufacturing sector as well, right? So manufacturing exports are, however, capital intensive and require policy support. Now, we cannot sell anything in the market just because we aim to sell it. We have to maintain proper support, the standard regulations, and it will be also capital intensive. Why? Because there will be many things which will be involved. So primary goods like bananas are literally low-hanging fruit in the export game and can deliver quicker turnarounds. So it's basically, so for example, banana, it doesn't have much shelf life, right? But when it in the when in the market, if it is seen in the good condition, people just quickly go and buy them, right? So hence it gives quicker turnarounds. Now the lower capital intensity makes the export effort more inclusive, and it also achieves geographical diversification that mitigates climate risks. So for example, if there is any place which is producing bananas or rice, for example, now if they are aiming to sell it to the variety of audience, okay, so this way what they can do is they are geographically diversifying, and any type of climate risk which can or which might happen, they are mitigating it in a diversification way. So yet such exports need to be handled them for them to acquire scale, achieve quality, and gain market access. India is a big entity in the food market, both in terms of import requirements and export potential. So through import requirements, what do we mean is like the basic machineries, what we need to produce a higher yield. That is one of the import requirement, and export potential because we have enough food, and we have a good farm. We have good amount of land where we can grow different types of food and grains which we can export. and which is not also available in most of the other countries. So its farm policies have favored select crops such as cereals, which dominate agriculture exports. This orientation results in heavy import dependency on crops, right, over which the country has not gained food security, such as plant-based proteins and edible oil. So here, what we are trying to do is that the heavy import dependency on crops over which the country has not gained. So over the crops like in which we have heavy import dependency, the country is not gaining food security in that. For example, the plant-based proteins and the edible oils. So both factors can be leveraged to push newer farm export like horticulture and dairy. These segments have a lower water dependency, which makes production and export more sustainable, right? Because horticulture and dairy, they don't have much water dependency, and it can make the production and export more sustainable as well. Okay, for the crops, for the grains, we need water, and we need a heavy dependency on water. Otherwise, those grains will not grow. So principally, though exports address India's immense waste of fruit and vegetables that contribute to high domestic food prices. So it may be early days, but diversification of farm exports can restore some balance to the internal market shaped by price support, patchy irrigation, and inadequate warehousing. So India's farm economy has been distorted by state intervention directed more towards consumer interest than farmers. Exports offer a variety of farmers in a market-driven solution to agriculture. Resistance to reform of agricultural marketing at home can be deflected using buyers whose food prices are not government of India's responsibility. So this addresses India's inherent policy contradiction that adds to these threats on its farm. So it basically says that it can be early for us, but the diversification of exports can restore some balance and also in the internal market by the price support. So, for example, now we have so much inflation going on. Everything in the food sector, they are booming. The price is booming. So, in order to control that, though it may be early, but by diversifying, we will have enough funds, or maybe we will have enough sources so that the price can cool off and both the internal sector and the external sector can benefit from it. So India's farm economy has been distorted by state intervention, directed more towards consumer interest and farmers. And also exports offer a wide variety because there will be a lot of farmers or a lot of participants which will be involved. And resistance to reform can be deflected using buyers whose food prices are not government of India's rules. So this addresses India's inherent policy contract that adds to these threats on its farm. So it will basically, if we do not do it, if we restrict the exports, then it might affect the farmers. Okay, so that is it for the first article. Now we will go with the second economic editorial. So this is, I think this is one of the important one. Uh, let's see. So the rupee dollar do their own dance. Okay, so this is one of the highlight of this editorial, that rupee and dollar will be having their own policies and they will be going hand in hand, or maybe they can also have some conflicts at times. Okay, so now we'll see what this editorial tells about. So success has many fathers, failure an orphan. Okay, the cliche is most radically broken in popular economic commentary, deciphering growth cycles. Explaining growth slowdowns or uptakes via quick attributions is a favorite with the economic commentariat. So the recent macro slowdown is linked to RBI's tight monetary policy and ostensibly dollar peg stance. So here, the recent, which is like economy which is affecting, okay? So macro means an economy at large, which means for the country that the economic slowdown is happening, and it is based on, like, one of the factors, the tight monetary policy, okay, which RBI is imposing. And ostensibly dollar peg stance, former CEA, Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramanian, has recently argued that RBI's stiff dollar peg over the past 2 years has intensified monetary tightness and undermined export competitiveness. worsening the slowdown. So though we have slowdown now, the chief economic advisor, okay, the former chief economic advisor, he told that since we are having tight monetary policy, so this is leading down to slow economy, okay, slow growth in the economy. Now it's useful to test the hypothesis against data and on first principles. So we are going to just verify like what is the um, reason behind what he told and what are the instances and the significance of the statement made by the former CEA. Okay, so rupee slide. Over decades, the dollar rupee has always moved in a step function, several years of flattishness, even rupee appreciation, followed by a period of sharp depreciation. So basically, here it says that most of the times it was flattish. I mean, the rupee and the dollar conversion was constant, but there was some instance when rupee had appreciated, which means that the rupee had gone stronger. For example, now if $1 is 70 rupees, so if appreciates, that means $1 will be 50 rupees. Okay, followed by a period of sharp depreciation. So sharp depreciation means, let's say it must have spiked up. So if $1 is again 60 rupees, if it is depreciating, that means the rupee will be higher. So let's say $1 is equal to 90 rupee will be one of the example for the depreciation. Now the interest parity framework holds over longer periods, but offers little guidance for the medium terms. Flattish or appreciating phases often stem from high capital flows, which was during these years, or inflation management, typically followed by sharp depreciation, driven by macro weakness or normal market adjustment. So the relative dollar rupee stability since end 2022 reflect India's COVID era fiscal prudence, shallower 2022 monetary tightening, and lower core inflation volatility. So here, what happens is like after the COVID, since end 2022, it reflects that the India's COVID era fiscal prudence. Okay, so after the India COVID era, it says that the 2022 monetary policy have gone a bit shallow and it has also tightened, which has lowered the core inflation volatility with a stable balance of payment and RBI's dollar purchases, building forex reserve of above $700 billion. Sharp rupee appreciation was averted. So basically, with this much of money in the forex reserves, we saw that the rupee appreciation was averted. It was diverted. We couldn't see, though we had a stable BOP. Okay. Let's see what is the meaning of averted. A AVRTED. So it means stop, prevent. Yeah, so I was right. So this means that where we were is that yeah, sharp rupee appreciation was averted. So also, if there is a sudden rupee appreciation or depreciation, it can be harmful for the economy. Why? Because there will be too much fluctuation happening, and the exports imports might get affected because the investors, let's say, who are going to make foreign portfolio investment, they won't have too much of belief that what if like at one moment it is going up and the other moment it goes down, right? So even the general tendency of any investor would be to have a significant linear growth, not too much fluctuation that should happen. So as in the case for India, there is a fiscal cost to forex reserve build up via net capital flows. So net capital flows is how much we are getting, what is the inflow, up minus what is the outflow. So yield on reserves is less than the cost of sterilizing excess rupee liquidity created during reserve buildup and the cost of servicing capital flows. So spending a small fraction of it, that is $50 billion, in recent months to dampen volatility while inflation at cyclical spikes is merely good use of reserves for the intended purpose. So basically, it says that when the inflation is rising up, right? So like there was a cyclical spikes, so it was going up and down. So to dampen it, a small fraction of it, so a small fraction of the forex, which is $15 billion, it was used. Okay. And the intended purpose of that was satisfied. So basically, let's say when rupee is getting stronger, so what RBI would do is it will pull the money, it will buy the dollars so that the uh, appreciation does not take place much for rupee. Otherwise, it will not benefit. So let's say when appreciation is happening of rupee, right? So the importers will be benefited. And now, if too much appreciation is happening, or let's say if too much depreciation is happening, so either of the importers and exporters will not be benefited. So we know that, let's say, the depreciation when it is happening, it is the exporters which will get who will get benefited, and when uh, appreciation is taking place of the Indian rupee, then the importers will be benefited, right? The currency depreciation and exports. Weakening the currency is a tempting policy tool to boost exports, but evidence of its effectiveness is limited. Studies, including the World Bank, show a declining link between depreciation and export growth. Okay. So factors like, because we know that depreciation and export, so it is though we know that a depreciation and export growths are directly proportional. So, for example, when the rupee is depreciating, exporters will be benefited. But there is a declining link what the World Bank is observing. So, factors like GVC participation, stable tariffs, and large firms adapt hedging forex risks play a far greater role in export performance. So, evidence of the relative export performance of India and China bears this out. Between 2018 and 2023, the rupee depreciated about 15% against the renminbi. So it is the China's currency. And against that, 15% depreciation had happened. That means that, the China's currency got stronger compared to the Indian currency. In the same period, China's merchandise exports grew faster than India's, 36% versus, this was despite China's higher base. So China had done $2.5 of $1 trillion in 2018 exports against $324 billion exports of India, and a worldwide China plus one sourcing trend in response to US trade measures. Okay, so it basically tells about the comparison between what the China and India's exports are there in terms of figures, and how um, the Indian rupee got depreciated against the renminbi, which is China's currency. Okay. So increased risk of a market attack on the rupee. So George Soros' original fame was due to his attack on the British pound in 1992. Does RBI's defense of a dollar rupee level increase the risk of such a financial market attack on the Indian currency? Rather unlikely. So it says, what if the dollar rupee level increased the risk of such a financial market attack, right? So rather unlikely, India's fundamental macro stability variables are strong. Current account deficit, okay, is running at a modest of 1% of GDP, and inflation is in and around RBI's targeted bands. Inflation is also within the range of 2 to 6%, and current account deficit is running at a modest of 1% of GDP. So not much. Though we aim to, the deficit should be less, but it is okay. It is very much less, and we are in good figures. And most public debt is funded locally. So further, India's policy tools are more numerous and sophisticated than Britain's were in 1992, including that of having only limited convertibility on capital account. So currency and tighter liquidity, while selling dollars in a spot market does drain liquidity at the margin. So when we sell the dollars, right? So it basically what happens that the supply of dollar is increasing, right? And supply of dollar, so at the margin, it will drain the liquidity. It's one of the many tools used by RBI to manage systemic liquidity. Okay. And given RBI's continuing concerns around credit growth, especially in unsecured loans, along with inflation exceeding the target band in recent times, tighter liquidity seems to be an objective instead of an unintended consequence of exchange rate management. So basically, here the editor has appreciated why, because the main objective is not to see the exchange rate management, but with this paragraph, we see that RBI is continuing concerns for the credit growth and the unsecured loans, which is getting lower in the country day by day, right? The NPAs are getting lower, and also the inflation is within the target range. Liquidity seems to be an objective. So instead of exchange rate management, the RBI is focusing on the price stability and managing the inflation rate. Tight fiscal policy. So since COVID, India's growth has been predicted on premium consumption and public capital expenditure. The former is in a cyclical consolidation mode after 3 years of breakneck growth. The big lag is from the fiscal. In the first 5 months of the year, central capital expenditure was down nearly 20%. State government's capex would be lower too, in part thanks to welfare budgets rolled out in many large states that would eat into fiscal space for capital expenditure. So, price of a zero tolerance approach to macro stability, fiscal inflation, and capital appreciation. Uh, so, CAD is growth cyclicality. RBI's exchange rate management is dovetailed to the former, as Indian policymaking has privileged the former. It is neither terribly radical nor it is a failure of policy. Casualty hunting expeditions aside. So he is the chief investment officers of ASK Wealth Advisor, and he has said that though we have this zero tolerance policy approach to micro stability, right? So RBI's exchange rate management is dovetail to the former, as Indian policy making has privilege to the former. So it is neither terribly radical nor it is a failure of policy. So we are in the moderate side. That is what this editorial is telling about. So that is all. Now, let's see what comes up tomorrow. Very excited. Thank you for joining the session. Bye.